Thomas, hey, hi, how's it going?
Hey, Charles. Thanks for having me on, man.
It's a pleasure, and I wanted to say right off the bat that I've been tracking you and your work, and I thought in particular The Order was one of the coolest shows that I had seen, and
Yeah.
one I actually had interviewed for a couple times.
Yeah.
It was Sarah at the start of season one, and
Great.
Jake at the start of season two, and even Sam Trammell had great things
Oh,
to say about it.
brilliant.
It
Yeah.
just seemed like you were such a good group, and it was the number one trending show. Like for a show to have that sort of global impact, I thought it was really cool. I thought that was a really good show. It was nice to see you on that one as well.
Man, well, I appreciate you saying all those things. Yeah, it really was. I have that show to thank, I think, for everything that I've done to date. And, that was a real foundational experience for me. And yeah, those other actors, they'd had a lot more TV and film experience and film work than me. I was just a fresh out of theater school, kind of wide-eyed. I still had no idea what I was doing, but it was such an amazing, such a cool project. Like you said, I really connected with the writing immediately, even during the audition process, when it felt like everyone and their grandmother was asking, did you go out for the order? It was in Vancouver, at least everyone auditioned for that show. And it was such a cool project. It was such a breath of fresh air. We do so many, like, Vancouver's home to like 90s era horror. It's where it all gets shot, like, or a lot, at least a lot of it supernatural. And you know the order, in a way, I think, was an homage to that era of horror. And in a way, it kind of pokes fun at itself, but is also doing its own thing. And it was such a cool world to get to play in for a little bit. I only wish we could have had some more time to expand on those stories. And yeah, for me at least, like, it definitely resonated with my inner geek, and talking about ancient magical artifacts and history, ancient history. And the blurring between what is fact and what is fiction, and what is magic and what is just our modern experience. Oh, it was such a cool show. Yeah, thanks
Yeah,
for saying all that, man. It's always cool to talk about that show and bring back some memories and stuff.
it was
Yeah.
also kind of cool to see, just dipping into some of your work that I'd seen and refamiliarizing myself with. You tend to do a lot of those, or you tended to do a lot of sort of horror, sci-fi, fantasy types. I don't know if that's just, you mentioned Vancouver, and a lot of them are sort of
Yeah.
based in and
Yeah.
around, but a film like Spiral, for example, which
Oh,
I
yeah.
was able to really
Did you see that one?
enjoy. I did. Well,
Oh,
I saw it.
wow.
I saw it now. I mean, I
Oh,
saw it to
wow. Awesome,
prepare.
Charles. Thanks, man. That's
I thought it
cool.
was just, I thought it was like the sequel to Saw, but it turns out it was. And then digging into sort of the history of it, just to see, you have chosen some really interesting projects, and or happen to be in them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to lead that into this one, to
Hmm.
see that you were involved in Sky, it seemed like, in a way, it was like the natural fit, but in another way, it was kind of like a little bit different. I don't know. What was your experience like?
Man, that is so. I have to hand it to you. I think that's very insightful, and I really feel like you are pretty spot on in a lot of those estimations. I That's kind of cool, and that's a great segue to talk about SkyMed. Because you're right. I do feel a lot like I have been mostly employed in those genres in television and film, whether it's like the kind of the the young adult teen kind of fantasy, kind of vampire werewolf teen romance kind of thing. That was a lot of the order, in a sense. It dabbled in that genre. It was a bit more mature. It had that kind of black comedy aspect to it that I really personally loved, and what drew me to the project in the first place. But yeah, I and SkyMed was really cool because it came at a certain interesting time in my life where I was making some pretty major shifts in just in terms of the way I viewed myself. And I'd picked up martial arts again, just midway through the pandemic, and I was really, really hoping to manifest some of that more physical martial training that I'd been doing in my screen work and in my career as an actor. And SkyMed was such a cool, man, you're so spot on with that. When you said like it's a departure from the norm, but it's also very much like reminiscent of characters that and like I've played the brooding, kind of icy guardian, slightly paternal, character before in Hamish and other projects. Like it wasn't kind of hard to get into his head in a sense, because it felt very familiar, like in terms of the behavior and how he sort of how I imagined he viewed the world and all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, it was so cool because it felt like I got to be a part of an action show. And it was something that I'd sort of been dreaming about and training for in my own time when I didn't expect to ever really work again in the acting industry because of, COVID and the pandemic and the way that it affected the industry. It kind of just dried up overnight. And if, you didn't already have work or, it was a tough time for me and it was definitely a low point in my life. And, SkyMed really, I booked that job when I was really making a serious, like I was making a big turn and I was feeling a big shift happening in my inner life and in my inner world. And to kind of feel like SkyMed somehow, obviously like meant to be doesn't make sense because it's such a lottery that we all play in this industry, whether you get the job or you don't. It's, you never want to, I never want to at least know the odds, you know what I mean? Because no matter how hard you work or how talented or how much you may deserve it, for all of us, like there's a huge degree of chance involved, and that, that can dictate things. But for me, I was so fortunate to have SkyMed come at a time where I felt like I was prepared for a show like this, and it was awesome because it also, really appealed to my inner geek, I wanting to fly spaceships and, I'm in all of a sudden the cockpit of this replica plane, in a movie studio, and there's real rain and wind and all the atmosphere is there, and you feel like the claustrophobia and the crampedness of that cabin. And, it was so cool to just live and breathe in that world. And I mean, in the show, it's a medical drama, but it's also, a fast-paced adventure show, and I think if we can make our audience feel some of the adrenaline that I even felt filming it, like filming this show was as much of an adventure as, the real life adventure of what these people do. Like these people are real heroes, and it's cool to highlight a part of Canadian culture and a part of our society, and our wilderness and our landscapes and all these Canadian voices that are actually really get their time during SkyMed. It's such a cool, and to be on an American platform like Paramount is really cool too. As a Canadian, like you feel sometimes there's a bit of a glass ceiling, being in Canada, and to get exposure like that and to be able to, do a show that has Canadian voices and tell some really cool stories. I'm super honored and I'm so proud of the work that everyone did. We really became a tight unit, as much as they are in the show. Like these people really depend on each other, and these communities up there in Northern Canada really depend on each other. They depend on the lifelines that are these, medical ambulances, these airplane ambulances, even in the West Coast in Vancouver, it's, I have it so cushy, I know I don't have to worry about getting to a hospital, or if I have an appendicitis, like I'm not hundreds of kilometers away from, medical attention. And some crazy stuff goes down in the show. I'm not gonna lie. And I hope that like you find it exciting, because the amount of stuff that is packed into all 9 episodes, like we turned it up to 11, and there's a lot of characters in there, and there's a lot of big dreams that they're fighting for. So like there's always going to be, someone's tragedy and someone's joy happening kind of simultaneously. I'm so excited to see the finished product. And yeah, that was a long-winded rant, but that
No,
was
I was going to
great,
say,
great observations you made.
I'm so used to talking to chatty people. I'm not used to these taciturn kind of, not very long answers that you just gave, and it was a lot. I'm trying to follow it up now in such a way. Well, how about we'll talk about Paramount, because this is, the brand is sort of newer I guess, the streaming service and sort of
Yeah, yeah,
what it is.
exactly.
But I feel like it is the perfect show for Paramount. You know, they do feel like the shows that they're putting out, the content feels like this fits perfectly within it. It's right in the pocket.
Yeah,
Um,
and yeah,
and all at once too.
yeah. July 10th, the whole 9 episodes will be available on Paramount Plus. It feels like a privilege, definitely, to be on a platform like that, and also to be kind of neighbors with shows. I don't know, like Halo. I'm definitely, I'm a gamer. I'm a
Yeah.
geek. I've loved Halo since I was a kid. It's kind of surreal to know that we'll be kind of sharing a platform with shows like that. And also Paramount's got a legacy in
Mm.
film and cinema. So it feels, it's quite an honor, especially that they took a chance on a show that features mostly Canadian actors and Canadian storylines. And but what I really think, this is something that our EP Ron Murphy said. He came on and he directed a couple blocks of the show, and we really got to know each other, and I really vibed with his directing style. And he said, that there aren't really that many unexplored territories left on the map, and Americans are pioneers, they are explorers, and they have that in their blood, and I think it's a reason why shows maybe like Yellowstone have been so successful nowadays, is because like people really want a taste of that adventure. They want sort of something that's going to remove them for a second from the normality of modern living and modern day existence. And yeah, and Northern Canada, even for me being a Canadian, was an experience, and we weren't even that far north. Like I'll admit, we would often film maybe an hour 45 minutes outside the city of Winnipeg, which is basically it's featured in the show, in the series, and it's kind of where the major hospital exists that all these other communities would eventually fly to. And if you look at a map of Manitoba, like it's at the eastern edge of the prairies, so it's very windy, it's extremely cold. Like it can get to -30, -35 Celsius, with the wind. And we're filming out in these conditions, and and we're not even that far from the city. You know what I mean? We're not hundreds of kilometers out like these guys are, who are on these little deployments for months at a time, not seeing their families, and just very much just having to live and cohabitate with each other. It's kind of like a wild, even though they're nurses and pilots and they're looking to have jobs in the city, at hospitals or wherever they want to go, private practice, but everyone needs to get these hours, and the only way you can get these hours is doing these pretty pretty wild jobs. And obviously the stakes are massively high in this show, and people are put through real, like, life testing situations, and some of the more extreme stuff that you would only really read about in, like, wilderness autobiographical novels of people surviving wildlife attacks and mechanical failures when you're 20,000 feet in the air, or it's some high stakes stuff. And it was really fun for me to feel like I was playing a part, and to watch everyone just give their all every single day, and in long days, in tough conditions, in rain and snow and wind, and just like, you take your jacket off and 5 seconds later your lips are blue and you're shivering. It doesn't matter how many heat warmers you hide under your costume and stuff like that. It was a cool taste of what it must be like, just to do that as a job. So I definitely gained a huge appreciation for what these people do. And the consultants, the pilots, and the real life nurses and first responders that we had on the show, helping us figure out the behavior and the lifestyle and just the mindset of these people. They knew the writers and they knew the showrunner, and it was very much a personal story that they were telling with SkyMed. It was a lot of real life experience blended in there. So to get to know these people and have them foster us while we told these stories was such a special experience. And I can only hope that the real people who do this stuff watch the show and think we've at least taken the time to try and respect what that real experience must be like. Because I can't imagine for like me, I'm such a soft West Coaster. The idea of being a paramedic and like having to witness some of the grisly stuff that they do every single night and every single day, and just get up and do it again and do it again. And these pilots that are sleeping sometimes just in the middle of nowhere, you know, with a backpack, and because you're stationed overnight, you got to wait for your next transfer, and it's a lonely existence. I think it takes a certain, you need to do it, you know, to a certain extent, in the same way that I kind of feel like you need to, if you want to be an actor, like you have to need to do it, because man, is it going to sort of mess your life up in a way that you might not want, you know, or cost you, or you know, it's going to ask you to sacrifice a lot of things, like your time, and time with, you know, family, loved ones, all that kind of stuff. It demands, you know, it demands stuff, and so are these characters going through that same kind of demand while they're trying to, you know, chase their dreams, and we can all relate to that. And I really hope that everyone can find a piece of themselves in these characters, you know, that we're showing in this story.
Wow.
Yeah.
Another short answer. What do I have to do to get you to say things?
Yeah, honestly,
Like
man.
pulling teeth or something. Anyway, I've seen we got the first three. And you know what's funny is that, you know, you're talking about how you're sort of brooding. We don't really know a lot about you yet.
Nova.
It's a
Yeah.
slow burn. Yeah, it's a slow reveal. So, you know, let's set it up a little bit. What are we gonna see?
Okay. I mean, like, I think about Novak when I first was like trying to figure out who this dude was. I thought about like Scar from The Lion King a little bit, and I thought about the idea of some guy who imagines he's this kind of badass lone wolf sky captain, sort of army boy, kind of air cadets. You know, he's got that militaristic discipline in him. He's from an immigrant family, so he's sort of at odds with his family when it comes to his life choices and his career goals. And so, as much as he sort of likes to imagine himself as this sort of solitary cat who's sort of all got it all figured out, you know, he likes to imagine that he isn't, I mean, he's a captain, so that's part of his job. And when you think about the responsibility of being out there, you know, in any given situation, let's say take an extreme case, like we need to fly this plane and get these, you know, responders into an area where a person is in a life-threatening condition, maybe what, you know, or some extreme case, you know, they've got appendicitis or something, and but the conditions that they have to fly into to get these people to where they need to be to help this person and then get them out could potentially cost the lives of everyone involved. So someone's got to make that call, you know, and it's the captain, it's the person who's number one flying the plane, because it has to be someone's responsibility. It can't be a group decision. And Novak knows that, he knows how to do his job, but he sometimes allows his own emotions, personal feelings, judgments. He's got a very low tolerance for BS. I think that has to do with that kind of Eastern European sort of immigrant mindset, and also the sort of discipline that he would have gained through doing cadets and stuff like that. That is like he has a very fixed in stone idea of what is right and what is wrong. However, I think he allows his own judgments and personal feelings to interfere sometimes with his calls. And that's something you can never be allowed to do. You know, you can't let your emotions get in the way of making like the most rational call, you know, and it's his responsibility to call the plays sometimes, even though he does have a co-pilot and nurses there who, you know, are able to give their opinion and stuff. So he has a really strong sense of his duty. It's just that he doesn't really know how to play well with others, and he's, you know, judgmental, and he's temperamental, and he, you know, he's got a real rivalry, I think, with Bodhi, who, you know, he kind of sees as this just Labrador puppy who's just bouncing around. And he's like, look, man, like, you don't get it. Like, there are lives at stake here. This is serious stuff. You gotta, you know, you got to smarten up. And you know, they obviously, but Novak doesn't have all the answers. He just thinks he does. He just imagines himself. And over the, you know, you're right. Like, we don't get a real strong, you know, taste of him yet. But what's cool about this show is, yeah, there's so many characters. Everyone gets their different crescendo throughout. So there'll be definitely more to come. Yeah. But, you know, to summarize, I guess, you know, he thinks he has all the answers, but yeah, we'll discover it's, yeah, not quite as clear as that.
So you definitely took experiences, I can tell. Did you get to actually grab anything from the set? I think there's a part on the show too where they're talking about all the gear and what they're gonna hold on to.
Oh my God, could you imagine? Yeah, I would have. I wish I'd walked away with one of those flight suits, but
Right?
they're in the vault right now, waiting to see if we get a season two. Which fingers crossed on that one. But um, oh man, I got some lovely gifts from the production, from the writers, and it was such a special experience to get to work with these people who really knew the real life heroes that we were portraying. And it's cool. It's such a special relationship you develop as an actor when you work with a writer over the course of a season of television, because you have like months of working together. And it's like, I'm not a musician, but I imagine it's kind of like jamming with your buddies, where you're kind of feeding off of each other's excitement and inspiration. And we don't really know what's coming week by week. And as you develop these characters and everyone starts to figure out what they're doing together and who you are and how you fit in the dynamic of the team. And oh, there's just so much fun cross pollination. Like I'm a huge Thai boxing freak, and I try to infect people with Muay Thai wherever I go. And all the lads on the show were fantastic, and they would be in the gym with me every day, whether we were filming or not, busting our butts. And I think some of that was able to get onto screen, like, well, there's going to be some action sequences in here. And I think it was definitely, in a weird way, it kind of felt like a gift, and it was one that I was ready for, and everyone else was along and had our backs throughout the whole ride. And I couldn't be more grateful to the team, like crew, production, writers, actors. Man, everyone gave their all, and there were some hard days and no one complained, and everyone, it was great. And I'm so proud of all of all my Canadian brothers and sisters for making this awesome project and telling these cool stories. So
Yeah.
cool. It's really interesting questions, man. Making me kind of think, definitely.
You're gonna like this one then. This is my great segue. So from the air to the water, say.
Oh yeah. Nice.
I've read Boys in the Boat.
Oh, wicked.
I went through that book. It was a couple years back, but I enjoyed it a lot. It was an incredible experience. You've just come back from shooting.
Yeah. We
I think I might have heard of your director before too.
Yeah, possibly. I'm speaking of medical dramas, right?
Speaking of medical dramas, exactly. Yeah. Oh, your segue too. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, we're vibing right now. It's great.
What can you say? What was your experience like?
Well, that was one of the most incredible opportunity. I mean, that job, that was I'm 2 weeks fresh from that, and I still am experiencing a bit of a high from just the whole experience of that. So yeah, we Boys in the Boat, it's you've read the book. It's about the 1936 Olympic rowing team from Seattle, the junior varsity team, and they essentially triumph over the greatest adversity imaginable. It's a true underdog story, and it's a major part of American sports history. They won gold at the Olympics in Berlin, and that also was a major turning point in history, a significant point. That was Hitler's Olympics, Hitler's Olympic Games, and that's where we saw Jesse Owens win the gold as well. And so it's a well documented event, and the book I'm actually just reading myself, having come off 5 months of learning how to row and 5 months of really falling in love with the craft of rowing. And really what it was 5 months in England, in the UK, 2 months of training, so we can hope desperately to condense many years of rowing training to make us look like elite level athletes. And then 3 months of filming on the water, in studio. It was the job of a lifetime, and I cannot wait for the film to come out. If anything, I think it captures the feeling and the movement and the speed of what it's like to be in an 8 boat going that fast at that stroke rate. Like, you just feel like you're balancing on a hairpin, and you're also rocketing forward at this great velocity, but you also kind of have this strange, Viking thing that wells up inside you because there's a jockey screaming at you to keep going, even though your legs are burning and your lungs are on fire. For me, it's kind of like being in the gym doing kickboxing, being in class and just being put through a grinder where your arms feel like concrete and your lungs are screaming, and you just desperately want to get off the ride, but you can't because there's 7 other guys in it with you and they're all depending on you. And it was that camaraderie and that feeling of brotherhood that I got to really experience as I learned how to row, in order to basically, portray some of the greatest the greatest rowers of their generation, and some of the most amazing athletes, of all time in that field, and really gain an appreciation for how difficult of a sport rowing in an 8-man is. There's, millimeters of difference between your hands and milliseconds of difference between the catches and the strokes and the releases and the recoveries can just completely throw the whole boat into chaos. And it took us months and months and months to even be able to get close to what those athletes were pushing, during those races. And for that distance and for that amount of time, it's like unlike any kind of exhaustion I've ever felt. And we were out there for 6-8 hours a day filming, but yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. And I really, really can't wait for people to watch that as well. So hopefully, we'll be seeing that sometime next year. And cool segue, man. And it's an honor to be able to talk about that as well.
I like yours better. Yeah. The book read like the book read like it was history. It was like living history. So I can only imagine what that would be like on screen. In that vein, if it requires a serious focus though. What about when your director is a notorious prankster? How does that work?
Yeah, so Clooney is a notorious prankster, and I was always expecting the worst, but he was pretty well behaved. Although I really just did love his sense of humor, and that, like, I never really felt, even though it felt like we were doing this impossible task in not just like filming this thing on water with like 15 boats at a time. Like that alone is enough of a logistical nightmare to make you never ever want to act or do film with water or boats again. But then, like just the training that we had to go through to even look like these guys, let alone perform at that level, which is an elite level. It's a world-class level. I mean, they won Olympic gold. They really did it. And even though that was like the scariest thing I've ever worked on, because I wasn't sure we were going to make it in the end. Like Clooney just always made you feel like everything was kind of under control, and he had that vision, and he was editing the movie as he went in his mind. So nothing was ever shot that wouldn't be needed in the editing room, So even though it was some really long days and there was a lot of rowing, it was, we got stuff done, and there was always an attitude of fun and good humor, and that does such wonders for the work environment when it's a high stress situation like a film set, and you're burning thousands of dollars a minute, and you have to wait because this man in an 8-person rowboat needs to reposition to get in line for the camera, but he's being blown off course by the wind. And you've also got other boats with cameras on them that are also trying to adjust in the middle of a current and waves. And the fact that we got anything shot at all was just incredible. But I mean, obviously I can't say too much about it until it comes out, but just the whole experience of it was the job of a lifetime. And I really developed a close bond with not just the other lads that we were, that I was in the boat with for, 5 months, but, everyone on that set, we really became family, and it was a special project. So, and I really actually feel like the work that I put in during SkyMed with the rest of my coworkers in the gym, and also developing myself and honing my skills as an actor, really allowed me to just, bring my all, to SkyMed and to Boys in the Boat. So, it kind of everything feeds, like I have the order to thank for, getting me to where I am. Those guys really took me under their wing and taught me a lot of stuff about, how to act really, and what I'm doing, and gave me a lot of good advice. And, now I'm able to really bring more of myself to future projects and stuff. So yeah, man. Yeah.
I think you wrapped it. I think this is that
Look
would have
at
been
that.
my segue. I would have gone even to, you know, a future one, but let's leave it there. Let's leave it there, and maybe in the future we'll pick it up again.
I would absolutely love that. Thank you so much for your time, Charles. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Thomas.